knocked myself out.
You're kidding.
And everybody thought, that's so great, cut. All right, John, come on.
Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Three's Company. Fact 15. The apartment number continuity error.
Oh, hi, Jack. Hi. Hey, you look like you just lost your last friend. Both of them. Oh, did you girls have a spat?
In the series finale of Three's Company, the apartment door clearly displays the number 201, but throughout most of the show's 8-year run and in behind-the-scenes footage, the same apartment was consistently identified as number 291, creating one of television's most glaring and confusing continuity errors that left fans scratching their heads about where the characters had actually been living all those years. This mistake was particularly jarring because it appeared in the very last episode, which should have been the most carefully reviewed and polished installment of the entire series. The apartment number wasn't just a minor background detail that most viewers would ignore, since it was frequently visible during scenes where characters entered and exited their home, and it was also mentioned in dialogue throughout the series when people were giving directions or identifying their address. The number 291 had become such a consistent part of the show's visual identity that many dedicated fans had memorized it as an important piece of Three's Company trivia. What made this error even more puzzling was that it wasn't just a one-time mistake that could be easily explained by a prop department mix-up or a last-minute set change. The wrong apartment number appeared in multiple scenes during the finale episode, suggesting that either the production team had somehow forgotten the correct number after all those years, or there had been some kind of deliberate decision to change it that was never properly explained to viewers. The continuity mistake became even more obvious when fans started comparing the finale to earlier episodes and behind-the-scenes materials, where the 291 number was clearly visible and had been used consistently for years. This type of error was relatively uncommon for a long-running series, since most shows maintain detailed production notes and style guides to prevent exactly this kind of confusion from happening during important episodes. Fact 14. The theme song rejection.
Jack failed his cooking exam, and he's gonna move out.
Move out? It's a good thing I showed up when I did.
The producers of Three's Company originally wanted John Ritter, Joyce DeWitt, and Suzanne Summers to sing the catchy theme song, Come and Knock on Our Door, themselves, but they quickly realized that the three actors were much better at acting than they were at singing, and wisely decided to hire professional vocalists instead. This decision to abandon the original plan turned out to be one of the smartest creative choices the production team made, since it allowed the actors to focus on what they did best while ensuring that the show's musical introduction would sound polished and professional. The idea of having the main cast perform their own theme song wasn't completely unusual for television shows of that era, and it probably seemed like a natural way to create a more personal connection between the characters and the audience, while also saving money on hiring outside talent. Many successful shows had featured their stars singing the opening songs, so the concept wasn't necessarily a bad idea in theory. However, when the producers actually heard Ritter, DeWitt, and Summers attempt to perform the song together, it became immediately clear that their vocal abilities were not strong enough to carry the memorable melody that composer Joe Raposo had created. The three actors were incredibly talented performers when it came to comedy, physical humor, and dramatic timing. But singing required a completely different set of skills that they simply hadn't developed professionally. Instead of forcing the issue or trying to work around their vocal limitations, the producers made the practical decision to bring in Ray Charles, who was a well-known leader of vocal groups and had worked extensively with Perry Como, along with Julia Rinker, who was an experienced background singer from The Dean Martin Show. This professional duo was able to deliver the upbeat, harmonious performance that the theme song needed to become the instantly recognizable and beloved television classic that it remains today. Fact 13. Jeffrey Tambor's Triple Threat. Jeffrey Tambor appeared on Three's Company in 3 completely different roles during the later seasons of the series, playing a wealthy businessman, a psychiatrist, and a dentist in separate episodes, which gave him an unusual opportunity to showcase his remarkable range and versatility as a character actor decades before he became famous for his iconic performances in Arrested Development and Transparent. This multiple character arrangement was relatively uncommon for television shows of that era, when most guest actors were typically brought back to play the same recurring character rather than being given the chance to create entirely new personas. The decision to cast Tambor in these 3 distinct roles demonstrated both his impressive acting abilities and the producer's recognition that he could convincingly portray very different types of people without viewers becoming confused or distracted by seeing the same face in multiple contexts. Each of his characters had completely different personalities, mannerisms, and social backgrounds, requiring Tambor to essentially become 3 separate people who happened to share the same physical appearance. This early showcase of Tambor's talent proved to be prophetic, since his later career would be built on his ability to disappear completely into complex and often eccentric characters that required him to master different speech patterns, body language, and psychological motivations. His work on Three's Company served as a kind of acting workshop that allowed him to experiment with character development and comedic timing in a relatively low-pressure environment. The 3 roles also highlighted Tambor's skill at playing authority figures and professional characters, since wealthy businessmen, psychiatrists, and dentists all represent different types of social status and expertise that require specific acting approaches. His success in these varied parts helped establish his reputation as a reliable character actor who could be trusted to bring depth and authenticity to any role, no matter how small or seemingly straightforward. Fact 12. Don Knotts' moral stand.
Don't feel bad.
What have I got to feel good about?
Well, look at you. You've got... Isn't the moon bright?
Don Knotts was the only cast member who publicly supported Suzanne Summers during her bitter salary dispute with the producers, and he made his position clear by walking directly up to her on set in front of everyone and announcing, "Excuse me, I'm going to go talk," to Suzanne, when the other actors were deliberately ignoring and shunning her. This brave gesture happened during one of the most tense and uncomfortable periods in the show's history, when Summers was demanding equal pay to John Ritter, and the entire production had become a hostile work environment. The salary conflict had created an impossible situation where Summers was contractually required to appear on the show, but was being treated like a pariah by most of the cast and crew because of her demands for higher compensation. John Ritter and Joyce DeWitt had stopped speaking to her completely, and the atmosphere on set became so toxic that Summers was eventually forced to film her scenes separately from the rest of the cast, appearing only in brief phone call segments. Knotts understood exactly what Summers was going through because he had experienced a similar situation years earlier when he was working on The Andy Griffith Show and had asked for a pay raise from executive producer Sheldon Leonard. During that earlier conflict, Knotts had also been given the cold shoulder treatment by his colleagues, which made him sympathetic to Summers' position and motivated him to take a stand when he saw history repeating itself. According to the biography Andy and Don by Daniel DeVise, Knotts deliberately made his support for Summers visible and public, sending a clear message to the other cast members that he thought their behavior was unprofessional and unkind. His willingness to break ranks and show compassion during such a difficult time demonstrated the kind of character and integrity that had made him beloved throughout his long career in television and movies. Fact 11. The $300 rent impossibility. Despite living in a spacious 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment in Santa Monica, just minutes from the beach, Jack, Janet, and Chrissy only paid $300 total per month in rent, which was an impossibly low amount even by 1970s standards for such a prime Southern California location. This unrealistic rent figure became one of the most glaring examples of how television shows often ignored real-world economics in favor of creating situations that served the story, even when those situations made absolutely no sense financially. Santa Monica was already considered a desirable and expensive place to live during the late 1970s, especially for apartments located so close to the ocean and beach areas. A two-bedroom apartment with the kind of space and amenities that the three roommates enjoyed would have realistically cost several times more than $300 per month, even when accounting for the different economic conditions of that era. The show's writers chose this artificially low rent amount because it was necessary for the plot to work properly. The entire premise of Three's Company depended on the idea that these three young people needed to share an apartment because none of them could afford to live alone. But if the rent had been set at a more realistic amount, it would have been impossible for characters with their jobs and income levels to afford it even when splitting the costs three ways. Jack was supposedly a culinary student who worked part-time jobs, Janet was a florist, and Chrissy was a secretary, none of which were particularly high-paying careers that would have allowed them to live comfortably in such an expensive area. The $300 rent figure allowed the show to maintain the illusion that these characters were struggling financially while still living in an enviable beachside location that looked great on television and provided the perfect backdrop for their romantic and comedic adventures. Fact 10. Heather Locklear's Kleenex Catastrophe.
Don't you know when the going gets tough, the tough get going? So you fail, big deal. Look at me. I failed almost everything I've ever tried.
Heather Locklear auditioned for a replacement role on Three's Company after Suzanne Summers left the show, but her tryout became memorable for all the wrong reasons when she forgot to remove the Kleenex tissues she had stuffed under her arms to prevent sweating, causing them to fall out of her shirt during the audition and leading to uncontrollable laughter from everyone in the room. This embarrassing wardrobe malfunction happened because Locklear was extremely nervous about the high-profile audition and was worried that perspiration stains would ruin her chances of landing the coveted role. The young actress was wearing a peach silk blouse that she was afraid would show any signs of nervousness, so she had carefully placed tissues under her arms as a precautionary measure before arriving at the studio. This was actually a fairly common trick that many performers used during auditions and important meetings, since visible sweat stains could be distracting and unprofessional, especially when wearing light-colored or delicate fabrics. During her audition, Locklear performed what she thought was a funny and engaging scene that showcased her comedic timing and acting abilities. She felt confident about her performance and believed she had done well enough to impress the casting directors and producers who were desperately searching for someone to fill the void left by Suzanne Summers' departure from the series. However, when she finished her scene and prepared to leave the room, Locklear heard unexpected laughter erupting behind her after she closed the door. It was only then that she realized the Kleenex tissues had worked their way out of her blouse and were now visible, making it look like she had been padding her bra or had some kind of wardrobe malfunction that completely undermined the professionalism she had been trying to project. Locklear later joked that the casting directors probably thought she had been trying to enhance her figure artificially, which definitely wasn't the impression she wanted to make. Fact 9. Jason Ritter's unscripted cameo. The adorable little boy who runs up to Joyce DeWitt's character Janet while she's feeding goats at the zoo in the later opening credits of Three's Company was actually John Ritter's real-life son, Jason, and his appearance in the show happened completely by accident when he wandered away from his mother during filming. The production crew was shooting new opening credit sequences at the Los Angeles Zoo in Griffith Park when they decided to create a fresh montage featuring the cast enjoying various activities around the animal park. Jason was just a toddler at the time and had come to the zoo with his family while his father was working on the new opening credits. During the filming, the young boy managed to escape from his mother's supervision and spontaneously ran toward Joyce DeWitt, who was in the middle of filming a scene where she was supposed to be feeding and interacting with the goats in the petting zoo area of the facility. Rather than stopping the cameras or trying to remove the unexpected little visitor, DeWitt immediately embraced the moment and began interacting with Jason as if his appearance had been planned all along. Her natural maternal instincts kicked in, and she started talking to him and including him in the scene, creating such a genuinely sweet and charming moment that everyone on the production crew knew they had captured something special. The producers and directors loved the spontaneous interaction so much that they decided to keep Jason's unscripted cameo in the final version of the opening credits, where it appeared for several seasons and became one of the most endearing parts of the show's introduction. Jason himself doesn't remember the incident since he was so young at the time, but years later he would follow in his father's footsteps and become a successful actor in his own right, appearing in shows like Parenthood and providing the voice of Dipper Pines in Gravity Falls. Fact 8. The cast never met. Until filming John Ritter, Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Summers had never met each other before the very first day of filming Three's Company. Yet their on-screen chemistry was so immediate and natural that viewers assumed they had been close friends and working partners for years. This remarkable instant connection happened because the casting process was so rushed and chaotic that there simply wasn't time for the usual meet-and-greet sessions or chemistry reads that normally happen before production begins on a television series. The reason the three leads were thrown together so suddenly had everything to do with the last-minute nature of Suzanne Summers' casting as Chrissy Snow. The producers had been desperately searching for the right actress to play the blonde roommate and were literally going through audition tapes the day before filming was scheduled to start when they finally discovered Summers and decided she was perfect for the role. This meant that when Ritter, DeWitt, and Summers showed up for their first day of work, they were essentially strangers who had to instantly become believable roommates and best friends in front of the cameras. The pressure could have been overwhelming and could easily have resulted in awkward performances that killed the show before it even got started. But instead, something magical happened that nobody could have predicted or planned. The three actors clicked so perfectly from their very first scene together that their natural personalities seemed to blend seamlessly with their characters, creating the kind of authentic friendship and comedic timing that most television shows take months or even years to develop. Their comfort with each other was so genuine and immediate that it became one of the key ingredients that made Three's Company such a success, proving that sometimes the best television chemistry happens completely by accident when the right people meet at exactly the right moment. Fact 7. Mr. Roper's real-life inspiration.
Oh, but I'm so concerned about them getting too much sunlight. They're so delicate.
Norman Fell based his portrayal of the uptight landlord Stanley Roper on a real person he knew in Philadelphia, who was completely convinced that he was irresistibly attractive and genuinely believed that people constantly stared at him because they were mesmerized by his good looks. This real-life character was so self-absorbed and delusional about his own appeal that he provided Fell with endless inspiration for creating one of television's most memorable and clueless authority figures. According to Fell himself, this Philadelphia man thought very highly of his appearance and was absolutely certain that everywhere he went, people were looking at him with admiration and desire. The man would walk around feeling like he was the most well-dressed and handsome person in any room, completely oblivious to the fact that people might actually be staring for entirely different reasons, such as his odd behavior or inappropriate comments. Fell described this inspiration by explaining that the real person felt he was attractive and that people were always looking at him because of how well-kept and appealing he appeared to be. This delusion of grandeur became the perfect foundation for Stanley Roper's character, who was equally convinced of his own charm and sophistication, despite being anything but charming or sophisticated in the eyes of viewers and other characters. The genius of Fell's performance was how he captured this specific type of male ego and self-deception that many people recognize from real life. Stanley Roper wasn't just a generic grumpy landlord, but rather a very particular kind of person who combines authority with complete lack of self-awareness, making him both annoying and somehow endearing at the same time. This real-life inspiration helped create some of the biggest laughs in the series, especially in scenes involving the relationship between Stanley and his wife Helen, where his inflated sense of his own attractiveness clashed hilariously with reality. Fact 6. The mystery brunette was Chrissy.
Maybe so, but girls are better at this than boys.
Come on, Chrissy, a little less talk and a little more action, okay?
In the opening credits of Three's Company, there's a memorable scene where Jack Tripper is riding his bicycle along the beach and suddenly falls off after being distracted by a gorgeous brunette woman walking nearby. But that mysterious dark-haired beauty was actually Suzanne Summers herself, wearing a wig, creating one of television's strangest visual paradoxes. This means that Jack was literally being distracted by his own blonde roommate Chrissy, except viewers had no way of knowing this because she looked completely different with dark hair. The reason for this bizarre casting choice had to do with the complicated timeline of how the show's opening credits were created. The beach scenes with the bicycle were filmed for one of the earlier pilot versions of the show, long before Suzanne Summers had been cast as Chrissy Snow. The original pilot featured a different actress named Susan Lanier in the Chrissy role, and the opening sequence was designed to work with that version of the cast. When the producers decided to replace Lanier with Summers at the last minute, they faced a practical problem with the opening credits they had already spent time and money filming. Rather than reshoot the entire bicycle sequence, they made the creative decision to keep the existing footage, but have Summers appear as the brunette stranger, even though it created this weird situation where she was essentially playing two different people in the same opening sequence. The visual trick worked so well that most viewers never realized they were looking at the same actress in two completely different appearances within the span of 30 seconds. Summers looked so dramatically different with dark hair that the brunette woman seemed like a completely separate person, which made Jack's distraction seem perfectly natural rather than confusing. This behind-the-scenes solution became one of the most clever examples of creative problem-solving in television production, turning a potential budget crisis into an interesting piece of television trivia. Fact 5. 3 strikes and you're...
Don't act so innocent. I know what's what. But how'd you get your clothes on so fast?
Excuse me, what is he talking about?
I don't know.
Rub-a-dub-dub, come hop in my tub.
What are you talking about?
and ABC rejected the first 2 pilot episodes for Three's Company before finally accepting the third version, making the show literally a perfect example of third time's the charm in television history. The original concept was based on the British sitcom Man About the House, but translating the humor and characters for American audiences proved to be a challenge much more challenging than anyone expected during the mid-1970s. The first pilot was developed by Larry Gelbart, who was already famous for creating the American version of MASH, and it featured a completely different cast than the version that eventually made it to air. In this early attempt, the male roommate was named David Bell and was portrayed as an aspiring filmmaker who happened to be an excellent cook, while the 2 female roommates were played by Valerie Curtin and Suzanne Zenor, in roles that were quite different from what Janet and Chrissy would eventually become. When ABC passed on this first version, the producers went back to the drawing board and created a second pilot that was closer to the British original, but still didn't capture what the network was looking for in terms of chemistry and comedic timing. The executives felt that something was still missing from the formula, even though the basic premise seemed promising enough to keep trying. The third pilot finally got everything right by bringing together John Ritter, Joyce DeWitt, and eventually Suzanne Summers in the roles that would define their careers. This version was hastily put together in January of 1977 after the previous attempts had failed, and the producers hired experienced writers Don Nickel, Michael Ross, and Bernie West to help reshape the concept into something that would work for American television audiences. A BC finally accepted this third version and ordered additional episodes for a spring debut, proving that persistence in television development sometimes pays off in ways that change entertainment history forever. Fact 4. The 18-year wardrobe malfunction.
I can do this.
Okay. All right. He's going to go out, and he's going to come back in.
Hi, kids. Well, I suppose you're wondering why I'm all spiffed up.
John Ritter accidentally exposed himself in a 1983 episode of Three's Company called The Charming Stranger. But this wardrobe malfunction went completely unnoticed by viewers, network executives, and even Ritter himself for 18 entire years until someone finally spotted it during a Nick at Night rerun in 2001. The incident happened when Ritter was wearing a pair of bright blue boxer shorts and sat down on a bed during a scene, causing part of his anatomy to briefly become visible through the loose-fitting garment. The reason this exposure remained hidden for so long had everything to do with the television technology of the early 1980s. Most people were still watching shows on cathode ray tube televisions with relatively poor picture quality, and many were using old-fashioned rabbit ear antennas that made the image even more blurry and unclear. The brief moment of accidental nudity was so quick and the picture quality so low that it was essentially invisible to viewers at the time. Everything changed when an extremely observant viewer was watching the episode on Nick at Night and happened to pause or slow down the scene at just the right moment. This person contacted the network to report what they had discovered, which created a minor panic at Nickelodeon when they confirmed that yes, there was indeed an accidental exposure that had been broadcasting into homes for nearly 2 decades without anyone knowing about it. When John Ritter was asked about the incident, he responded with his typical sense of humor and made a joke referencing the advertising slogan for Almond Joy and Mounds candy bars. He told the New York Observer that he had requested Nickelodeon air both versions of the episode, edited and unedited, because sometimes you feel like a nut and sometimes you don't, turning an embarrassing situation into a perfectly timed comedy bit that was quintessentially Ritter. Fact 3. The Sesame Street Connection.
I think they're about due again.
I think you're right.
I don't believe this.
The catchy theme song, Come and Knock on Our Door, that opened every episode of Three's Company, was written by Joe Raposo, the same musical genius who composed some of the most beloved children's songs in television history, including the Sesame Street theme song and classics like C is for Cookie and Bein' Green. This connection between an adult sitcom full of sexual innuendo and innocent children's programming seems almost impossible to believe. Joe Raposo was born in Fall River, Massachusetts in 1937 and became one of the most prolific television composers of his era. He started working with Jim Henson and the Sesame Street team in 1969, where he created the musical foundation that would define children's educational television for decades. His songs didn't just entertain kids, but actually helped them learn letters, numbers, and important life lessons through memorable melodies. Beyond Sesame Street, Raposo also composed music for The Electric Company, another educational children's show, which makes his work on Three's Company even more surprising. The man who wrote songs to teach children about friendship, sharing, and the alphabet was simultaneously creating the upbeat, flirtatious theme song for a show about roommates navigating romantic misunderstandings and sexual tension. The Three's Company theme song was performed by Ray Charles, though not the famous rhythm and blues legend most people know. This was a different Ray Charles who led the Ray Charles Singers and worked extensively with Perry Como for 35 years. He was joined by Julia Rinker, who had been one of the background singers known as Dean's Girls on The Dean Martin Show. What makes this musical connection even stranger is that Raposo also composed the theme songs for The Ropers, the Three's Company spin-off, meaning he was responsible for the musical identity of an entire television universe that couldn't have been more different from his educational children's programming work. Fact 2. Billy Crystal's gay man audition irony.
Felipe, is there something the matter?
Hey, everything is wonderful.
Billy Crystal auditioned for the role of Jack Tripper on Three's Company, which would have meant playing a straight man who pretends to be gay to fool his landlord. But he lost the part to John Ritter in what turned out to be one of television history's most ironic casting decisions. Crystal was already an up-and-coming comedian with some recognition from his appearances on talk shows, but he wasn't quite the household name he would later become. The role of Jack Tripper required an actor who could convincingly portray a heterosexual cooking student who fakes being homosexual, so he can live with two attractive female roommates without upsetting their conservative landlord Stanley Roper. The character's entire comedic premise revolved around this false identity and the misunderstandings it created throughout the series. What makes Crystal's rejected audition so fascinating is what happened immediately afterward. Instead of landing the role where he would have pretended to be gay, Crystal was quickly cast in another ABC comedy series called Soap, where he played Jody Dallas, television's first openly and unambiguously gay character in a primetime series. This groundbreaking role became Crystal's breakout performance and launched his career in a completely different direction. The timing of these two casting decisions created a perfect storm of irony that nobody could have predicted at the time. Crystal went from potentially playing a straight character pretending to be gay to actually playing a genuinely gay character, which was considered revolutionary for 1970s television when homosexual characters were rarely portrayed with any depth or respect. Looking back, it's hard to imagine anyone other than John Ritter as Jack Tripper, since his physical comedy skills and natural charm were so perfectly suited to the role. Meanwhile, Crystal's portrayal of Jody Dallas on Soap helped break important ground for LGBTQ representation on television and proved that his rejection from Three's Company led him to an even more significant and culturally important role. Fact 1. Plane crash salvation changed TV history. Suzanne Summers almost never became Chrissy Snow because she nearly died in a plane crash just 24 hours before her audition for Three's Company. The incident happened in 1977 when Summers was on a flight that experienced serious mechanical problems and came dangerously close to crashing before the pilots managed to save everyone on board at the last possible moment. The terrifying experience left Summers questioning whether she should continue pursuing acting at all, since her career hadn't been going particularly well up to that point. She was seriously considering giving up on her Hollywood dreams entirely when she got the call to audition for the new ABC sitcom. The timing couldn't have been more dramatic or life-changing. What made this story even more remarkable was how the near-death experience actually helped her land the role. Because she had just survived such a traumatic event, Summers felt completely carefree and relaxed during her audition process. She had no anxiety or nervousness about the role since she was just grateful to be alive, and this natural, laid-back energy was exactly what the producers were looking for in the character of Chrissy. The casting process for Chrissy had been incredibly stressful for the production team. They were desperately searching for the right actress and had been going through audition tapes frantically since filming was supposed to start the very next day. Network executive Fred Silverman was fast-forwarding through dozens of audition videos when he spotted Summers' tape and immediately knew she was perfect for the part. Summers was hired that same day and started filming the following morning, which means her entire television career and the iconic character of Chrissy Snow existed only because she survived a plane crash that could have ended everything before it even began.